Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion'sDailyDose.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's episode of Dion's Daily Dose. I have a very special guest tonight. So I haven't inquired yet, but pay attention. His name is Gabriel Gary, and I know he lives in Porter County, I believe somewhere. Chesterton, Portage, Valpo. There's a lot of places in Porter County. I'm not sure, but he does kind of what I do. He's a podcaster. He does interviews with well-known leaders and people. He's had State Senator Rodney Pol on his show. He's had the mayor Costas on his show. He's getting some serious traction. So good on him. The really wild part, at least for me, is he's less than half my age. He's only 15. I have to look at my life and I'm like, really? No, I'm just kidding. No, he's good people. At least it seems that way. And without further ado, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dion. I'm so thrilled to be on the show. I want to thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on. So do you, just out of curiosity, I know your name's Gabriel. Do you prefer Gabriel, Gabe, Mr. President? Like, what do you?
Yeah, so I go by Gabe. You know, my close friends call me Gabe. I get a little nervous when people call me Gabriel by first name. So yeah,
I got you. Okay, so yeah, it's like what, Dad? You know,
yeah, it's like kind of an official title, but you know, Gabe is fine as well.
Okay, all right. I'll use Gabe then, at least until you're old enough to take office and run that campaign. No, so what, like, when I was 15, I was like, into girls and cars and stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing. Like, why this at 15?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been super, interested in politics, super engaged. I mean, even going back to, second, third grade, I would always read up about, Theodore Roosevelt, Reagan, JFK, all that type of stuff. And when I started the podcast, Gen Z on Leadership, just nearly a year ago, June of 2023, I just took office as the president, and I really wanted to, make all the students in my school feel welcomed, have a fun place to go and learn, really, and run fun events. But I lacked some leadership qualities, and I thought the best way to do this is take it into my own hands and start reaching out to people to have. And what better way to do it than have a podcast so I can also share all that leadership advice with other people. And my state senator Ed Charbonneau said to me, "Whatever business you're in the business of people." And I think that is so true. And that's why I do my podcast, so I can, share my passion for leadership and politics as well.
Okay, awesome. So what do you think the big disconnect is, not specifically with reaching the youth, because there are a lot of youth that are very interested and very involved politically. I will say I think the Democrat Party does a little bit better job at reaching the youth than the Republican Party does currently. But what do you think the big, I don't know if hold up is the appropriate word, but I guess why more people aren't involved politically in your generation?
Sure. Well, I think, there's a lot of just disinterest with it. I think that peers of mine and, members of Gen Z, they kind of see politics as, stress, excess stress, but really they need to change their perspective on it as a way to change their community. Of course, I share this belief, and I'm sure you do, and many others. Like, you cannot complain about the status quo unless you're engaged, unless you're, reading up about the people that represent you and, building that relationship with people that represent you. And I think, in the media, they can portray it as, super polarizing and whatnot. But really, everyone I've interacted with, that's not, on the news, on live television, is super warm, super nice. And I think that they just, you need to kind of do your own due diligence when it comes to politics. It's one of those things that if you don't have, firsthand experience, then, you're not really interested. You need something to spark that interest. And I think that also another thing is, social media, and not being on social media, and that's definitely the biggest place to reach Gen Z. So, that's my take on it. They're just a little apprehensive to go into politics, definitely.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I've noticed is, like I referred to before, the Democrat Party being, I guess, they use social media better, for one. A lot of this is just, anecdotal or my personal experiences, but it seems to me like the best example I can think of is AOC going on Twitch to game. Right. It was a political stunt, but it was a highly effective political stunt. And I don't see that from some of even the younger, more engaged Republican leaders. Why do you think that is?
I think it also just goes back to, the values and what they align with, certain morals and beliefs that they hold near and dear. And I don't think that, going and gaming is a certain thing that I want my, public officials to be doing. I definitely think, right. I mean, I think that's a general, belief. I think that, definitely it's appealing to my generation because they want entertainment. They want stimulus. But I think that you really need to, if you're watching that and if you're watching, the news or watching your, your representatives and what they're doing on social media, you really have to understand what biases they have and how they're trying to spin, themselves. And yeah, I definitely say it's, the culture that, the Republican Party facilitates. We're not so much into, that type of activities online. There's different, ways to engage. And I think that there could be, a change in that if needed. There's definitely certain groups that are trying to be more public and more social. And of course, the Republican Party is more late to the game, but of course, the youth vote is swinging one way more nowadays. So, I just think that there is, change that is coming, and it's just whoever's more engaged. I guess it's, a competition in that sense.
Okay. I'm glad you brought up that there's this cultural shift, right? Because it is one thing that I've noticed. So a number of years ago, right, it seems as if, and really it relates, I'd say, to the millennial generation, right? You see the rise of the millennials and this kind of shift leftward. And I would argue that now, especially with Gen Z, and you would know whether this is accurate or not, but I see a very serious pendulum snapback to more fundamental conservative values, and kind of a rejection of a certain amount of liberalism. Is that something that you've seen?
I think that, what the news portrays is so polarizing today. I think that there is more, independence when it comes to Gen Z. But I do think that, and, there's stats that show this, is that it's more rebellious to be a conservative now. Of course, there was, the whole hippie movement in the 60s, which, kind of made it so you're rebelling for your parents by, going to parties and whatnot. And that's kind of what parents expect now, which is a little odd to me. I don't go out to parties. I'm not, I can't remember, last time I was, out of sleep or whatnot. But I think that it's more rebellious to, be a conservative. And, also there's, decline in faith and whatnot. So I think that's why, the Gen Z is trending more to the right. But, I think that Gen Z is, more pragmatic than anything. We just want, things that don't cause so much division in, among our ranks and whatnot. And we're kind of tired of seeing that, hatred on both sides as well. But, I think that's kind of my take. And definitely, the statistics all show that Gen Z is trending right.
Okay. So talk about the Cincinnatus. Is that like is that your personal blog? Is that like a school thing? What is it?
Right. So, I started the Cincinnatus, it's probably a couple months ago now. And if you're not familiar, your listeners or your watchers right now, Cincinnatus was a Roman statesman that there was a attack on his city in Rome. The Achaeans were attacking. He had to assume a role of leadership, military leadership. And, it was a swift victory in 15 days. And then he resigned his position, much like, Washington stepped down after his first term of presidency. And that's kind of the tradition that carries on. And, the Cincinnatus is a certain role model that, Washington, Lincoln, all these people look up to, which, is a little odd. If you ask someone their favorite leader, they'll say Lincoln, Churchill, Washington. But I mean, these guys look up to, guys like Cincinnatus. Lucius Cincinnatus is his full name. And I just wanted to, start a blog under that name because I knew that he was a great leader. So the Cincinnatus is, a blog where I can write op-eds. Other people can write op-eds. I've had, I've written 2, and then I've had State Senator Rodney Pol. I got him back to write an op-ed. And then I got actually Lee Hall. He wrote an op-ed for me. He's the high school Republicans chairman in Virginia, or development director. And he wrote one about getting Gen Z more engaged in politics. So it's, it's a super, fun way to get my message out there and, share my own opinions. Of course, I'm doing a lot of interviews, so I get to, take in and a lot of information spread out. So I'm glad that I have, my own platform where I can send out blog posts as well. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And people can go there. Is website. What's the URL?
Absolutely. And, of course, you promote it in your trailer, genzonleadership.com. And you can, of course, find that in all my social medias, Gabriel F. Gary, on every platform except TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. That's the one thing I will not do. And my link will be there in my description and whatnot. So, yeah, genzonleadership.com. Find my podcast and my blog, of course, the Cincinnatus. So.
Awesome. I only recently started doing TikTok. I avoided TikTok like the plague for a very long time. And the only reason that I'm on TikTok at all is because one of my executive directors was like, it's especially now that the ban is going into effect and all this legislation and all that, they're like, it's far more popular, especially with conservatives, but not just conservatives. The younger generation, such as Gen Z, are particularly paying attention to TikTok. So make sure you get on there. I'm like, fine. I went and did the stuff that I needed to do in order to do it. But my wife, women seem to love TikTok in general, and she's no exception. And I'm just constantly bombarded. The most frustrating thing about TikTok for me personally is hearing that stupid "Oh No" song over and over and over. It's like people want to put it on everything. I'm like, please. And I ask her, I'm like, aren't you tired of hearing it? No, not really. Oh, okay. All right. But, to each their own. So have you had trouble getting people to engage, or people generally like the people you're looking to interview? Are they generally very receptive to having an interview with you?
Yeah, of course, you're a podcaster, and as well as everyone that has, started a podcast or listened to podcasts, progressively and followed them along. You start small, you start with connections that you have, in the community. And that's what I did. I got Lee Hall, he's a young leader. And then I got the Valparaiso Police Department Chief, Andrew McIntyre. So that was, my first kind of big interview. And, from that, you just progressively go up. I've been, attending events, trying to network with other people. And I think what's so great about, my podcast is that I truly believe that I get some of the best leaders because they're willing to give a 15-year-old airtime. They're willing to give a 15-year-old 15 to 30 minutes. And that really shows, the humility and, the kind of modesty of these leaders. And anybody that's willing to, take 15, 30 minutes for a young person and their constituents in general is a really honorable person. And I respect that. And, you can see a lot of public servants when they get elected and they're in their term, they can kind of forget about the people that elected them. And I think that it's great to have, public servants that do interact and communicate with their constituent base. So it's great.
Absolutely. So that's really good. And I'm not a fan of Rodney Pol's policies.
Yeah,
but I give him major props. He's always been anytime I've seen him at an event or spoken to him, he's always been extremely nice, extremely courteous. Even though I'd say it would be hard for us to be more diametrically opposed viewpoint wise.
Yeah.
But we've never had any animosity. He seems like a very nice guy. And to hear that he took time out of his schedule, because state senators can be quite busy. And my understanding is he's very involved. So I will give him major props for taking the time out to sit down with you and do the interview and then to write an op-ed even.
Yeah. And I do have to add, I do, me and Rodney Pol, some things, especially marijuana legalization, that's one thing that I'm pretty firmly against. But he's a great guy. He graduated from Chester High School. I'm in Valparaiso, so he's one of those people in the community, and super nice. And I do have in my mission statement, like you do in your intro, that leadership is bipartisan, and it's great that I can talk to guys like Rodney Pol, who I have some fundamental disagreements with, but I can I can relate with as a person, and then I get to talk to people like you, and it's a great thing that leadership is such a universal topic, and yeah.
Absolutely. I will agree with you wholeheartedly that leadership transcends party lines. It's beyond bipartisan. It's nonpartisan. Leadership it's its own fundamental thing. And I'm like I said, I give credit where it's due, and I'll give credit to Rodney Pol. Good job, man. I actually read his op-ed and listened to most of, not all of, the interview. I ran out of time. But I thought it was, first of all, exceptional job by you. Seriously, man, like, accept it, because it's taken me years. I've been doing this for like 4 years. It's taken me like 4 years to get to a point where I'm.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Oh, that was. Yeah, oh my God. Are you okay? No, I'm just kidding. It sounded like it was like a mic thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's taken me to this point to get, I would say, as fluent with interviews and the things that I do. And it just seems rather natural for you. Little bit jealous, little bit. No, you're doing really well. So, what do you think? I guess the big issue is with reaching Gen Z, especially for the Republican Party, because that does seem to be a big weakness.
Mm-hmm. For the Republican Party, I would say, definitely, among my generation, I think that, the drug crisis in America is one of the biggest things. And we should be really touching on issues that do directly affect Gen Z, and not, still circling around on issues that, don't as much. And I'd say that the opioid crisis and the fentanyl crisis is one of the biggest things, and really focusing on why that's the reason that we're trying to get a secure border in the Republican Party. That's the main reason. There's been deaths in Porter County, from fentanyl, which is just terrifying for a lot of members of my generation. I would say connecting with them and inviting them out to events. And I've been to many Republican Party events, and let me just tell you, I'm probably the youngest in the room by far. So I would say, getting that publicity out. I personally don't like TikTok, but if we have to use TikTok to get more people at our events, it's fine with me. Yeah, I would say touching on issues that really directly affect and hit close to home for Gen Z.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. You bring up an interesting point, right? So there's a lot of reinforcement about, open border bad, all these people streaming in. And I recognize and agree with what you're saying as far as making it personal, right? I know that, like, when I was a kid, your age-ish, like, fentanyl wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even invented yet. There was crack, there was this, there was that, but you didn't have people dying in droves the way that we do now with the fentanyl crisis. Opioids happened, right? And but with fentanyl, it's a whole other animal. You simply get it on your skin, and it can and will kill you. There are, first responders and officers that have died because of exposure to this lab-made thing that, by the way, at least as far as I've been able to determine, it seems like all fentanyl comes from China.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a source for that, but based on everything I've been able to look up, that's the way it seems.
Yeah, and I think that's, one of the scariest factors. Of course, the Laken Riley incident is one of those things that really hits close to home. But I think that among, other things, I think fentanyl is one of the, the biggest issues. And I know, many congressmen in Indiana, such as, Jim Banks, if you're familiar with him, he's very hard or strict on fentanyl. and, the CCP, which I, truly appreciate because it does directly affect my generation.
Yeah. So my middle son he just turned 18, and he's had some friends. My oldest son actually had a couple of friends who knew people that died from fentanyl exposure. I think you're onto something there as far as these politicians, the people running for office, specifically the non-politician, the people who are running for office to truly change things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opportunity to use that personal connection to kind of move the conversation forward.
Definitely. And unfortunately, the people that do, run for office, unless you're, a businessman or whatnot, it's hard to get the funding, for campaigning. There's so many people that should be, public officials. And I was just talking with this one lady recently whose son, died of a fentanyl poisoning. And I was like, ma'am, you're the perfect person to run for public office. Like, you should be representing us in Congress. And she was like, oh, money, whatnot. So I think that's, one of the barriers that people face when it comes to that. But, overcoming your fears is one thing that you need to do in politics, for sure.
Oh, yeah. So, like, as someone who's run for office, the cost of running for office should definitely not be underestimated. It is a serious undertaking. However, for all of you, no matter how young you are, if you are considering representing whether it's mayor, whether it's whatever, right, all the way up to Congress and president, if you are even remotely considering it, start planning for it. Like, network, talk to people, go to events. Whichever side you align with, obviously I'm a conservative. I'm not sure if I would even necessarily call myself firmly a Republican. I align with the foundations of the Republican Party as it was founded, but I don't necessarily believe that today's Republican Party 100% represents that.
Yep.
That said, I'm very conservative, and I do believe that even if you're left or liberal or whatever you want to call yourself these days, Democrat, start networking, go to events, talk to people, and start planning, because you can start fundraising well before you even start running.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we should be cultivating, an environment where, public office isn't as daunting as it is, and making it more accessible for other people. So,
yeah, because it is, like, when you first look at, like, just even take a local race, right? Like, whether it's county council or city council or mayor, forget about, president, Congress, all that stuff. The biggest impact you can make in your local community is doing local things, whether that's running for local office or being involved with local events or whatever. Change starts locally. But even these little, quote, minor, unquote, offices are very daunting for the average person, the average taxpayer. You look at this stuff, you're like, yeah, I don't think I want to jump into that, especially when you see all the vitriol and all the hatred that happens come election season. We're just out of the primary. There were, mailers sent out and ads and just, so much negative stuff. And when you look at that, and it's very easy for the average person to go, oh, hell no, I don't want anything to do with that whatsoever.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree.
So I would argue, though, that that's the very reason why more ordinary people should be involved, so that we can get rid of that, that sort of stigma and that sort of negative energy, and get in there people that truly represent the interests of the majority of their constituents.
Yeah, definitely. And also, there's also not as many, U.S. veterans that should be in office. I think that there should be almost some, military, you should get some bonus if you serve the United States in the military in your campaign. That might be something, worth looking into, because there was a veteran that ran in my district, and, you know, she was a very accomplished woman, Jennifer Ruth Green, and she served in the U.S. Air Force. And I just think her service is, you know, so honorable that she should almost be given, you know, that upper hand, even though, you know, Norvan is the incumbent. But yeah, I definitely think that, you know, it's one of the biggest issues facing running for public office today.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there were actually, there was actually a campaign. I'm trying to remember. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I can't think of it. There was actually a major campaign that was launched in order to recruit veterans to run for local and higher offices. And I wish I could think of the name of it, but I'm sure if you look it up, you guys could find it. But I think that's a phenomenal idea. I actually didn't get the opportunity to serve, but my best friend Jim, that we do a segment with, he did. And one of the things that I think veterans and, you know, non-veterans who care about the military can agree on is that, number one, it's a phenomenal way to learn discipline and kind of get your stuff together. At the same time, it's almost embarrassing how our country treats veterans once they're no longer veterans. You know, once the country's done using them, kind of the way they're treated afterwards.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. My grandpa was a Vietnam veteran, and yeah, I mean, Vietnam is definitely one of those wars that they didn't get the correct treatment that they, you know, should deserve, since they were just, you know, taking orders. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. My uncle served in Vietnam. My grandfather served in World War II, in the Army and the Air Force. I'm still not entirely sure how he pulled that off, but one of those things. My uncle refused to talk about his time in Vietnam, and I understand that was quite common. But back to you, do you plan on serving in the military? Is it something that you've considered, or is it like, yeah, I think I'm good?
You know, it's definitely one of those possibilities. You know, I definitely, you know, opposed to what the popular belief is, I definitely want to try for a college degree. So, you know, wherever it takes me, definitely the military is a great route if you are wanting, you know, for your college to get paid for, frankly, since, you know, tuition is so high currently. But it's definitely one of those things I would look into. It's, you know, one of the only, you know, real careers I would consider it. You know, I forget who said it. There was like, somebody said like, oh, there's only like 5 or so real jobs, like teacher, doctor, you know, military, and then a couple more. And I think that, you know, our veterans, our country deserve our absolute respect, and it's one of those things that it's a calling. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I had one of my sons was actually all about joining the military until 2020, and post 2020 he's like, nope, can't do it. And we actually went to the fair in LaPorte County, and they had the National Guard had one of the MRAVs, the big, the big armored Humvees that they have. And he was so enraptured with it. He's looking at it. This is so cool. This is so awesome. And he's like, but I can't join. And I'm like, why not? He's like, cause FJB. And I'm like, well, National Guard doesn't report, to the president. They report to the governor. And he's like, who's the governor? I'm like, Eric Holcomb. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, but he won't be governor forever, man.
Right.
Come on, you're killing me here. Right. But it's an example. And the reason I even bring it up is because it's an example of how politics affects even something as seemingly minor as your career choices.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, whether you like him or not, and definitely there's, a little bit divided in the Republican Party itself. But, Trump is definitely, that was one of the positives, that there was, an uptick in military enlistment. And my cousin actually enlisted in the Marines when Trump was president. I think he played a, big role in it, being proud to be an American. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we need more of. And, of course, it's been on the decline since 2020, joining military. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is, it wasn't that long ago. I know that in 2020, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do find it interesting. In 2020, suddenly enlistment in the military plummeted. And now, it's like at an all-time low, I believe. to the level of Space Force, I guess, is trying to take over the National Guard, at least the Air National Guard, to kind of offset the record low recruitment. Prior to then, obviously, recruitment was at an all-time high. They didn't have any problem getting enough people. And so it's another example of political divide, but also what I guess the question in there is, what do you see for Gen Z, depending on which way this election goes? Like, do you think it's going to matter for you guys, or do you think that there's going to be a surge one way or the other?
In the sense that what's voter turnout going to look like, or what's military? What do you mean by like?
Well, like, I guess as far as, I guess I'm asking about morale, like, for Gen Z, because right now, anything on the news is negative. That's why it's news. They found, negative sells, what is it? Fear leads. I forget the term, but you know what I'm talking about. I said it on another, and now I can't think of it. But anyway, do you think that depending on which, who wins the election, that we're going to see a more positive or a more negative outlook for your generation? Because you guys are inheriting all this mess that we've created.
Right. And I think that it's one of those things where it's a difficult choice, especially for my generation, because, and I think that it's really going to be up to, who chooses the better VP. And I don't know who, DJT is going to pick, but I hope that he, picks someone strong that could assume the role of president in that case. From a foreign policy standpoint, I mean, of course, Donald Trump is the favored candidate in that sense, and I think that my generation really does just want peace. They want, prosperity for America, like everyone wants. And I think that it's, genuinely just going to be up to that. But I don't think that, whether it goes one way or another, it's going to extremely, affect it. But yeah, that's what I would say. Of course, like we talked about, Gen Z is trending more to the right. So I think that, the youth vote has a higher chance of swinging that way. But I would say from the standpoint of also like, being proud of your country. And, of course you saw, the decline, Gen Z, it's at an all-time low. So, whatever candidate can reinstill, loving America, I think they're inevitably going to win, whoever you truly think it is. So, yeah.
Have you noticed, and I remembered, it's if it bleeds, it leads. That was the term that I was trying to think of. And it relates to, car crashes, sell newspapers, or get the clicks, a 5-star safety rating doesn't. It's just the way that it is. People digest tragedy. But so there's been this really, really large push over even just the last few years for those associated with the LGBTQ community, the pride flag, the all that stuff, right? And it can be a very, very hot topic. It can get people very, very upset. So I'm just curious, have you noticed a corresponding incline in the presentation of it in schools over the last several years? Or do you find, at least for you yourself, that maybe it's not happening as much as is being claimed on the media?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that it's definitely not, happening as much as it is being, portrayed in the media, for sure. There definitely is more of a, push forward than, let's say, back in the 1970s when my grandparents or my parents, were in school, 1980s, whatnot. I'd say that, I think that everyone totally, respects that community as long as you're not pushing it into, our public school system. And I think that, honestly, that's the general consensus among both parties, unless you're extremely, of course, the extreme left does have it, completely, I don't even know how to describe it. But I would say that it's, a little less than you would expect if you watch, the news. You're like, oh, they must all be gay, but that's like what it's portraying in the media, and I don't think that's the truth. I think it's definitely a more minor issue than really is portrayed. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I just think that when we can keep out propaganda from both sides really out of school.
Mhm.
That's totally fine. Let's just keep the American flag up and we do the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. That's what I'm totally fine with, what we've been comfortable with since America was founded.
Okay, so I got a little bit of a spicy take for you, and I want to ask. So I'm glad you brought up the pledge, because I honestly have slightly mixed feelings about mandating the Pledge of Allegiance in our schools, right? I used to be very much, yes, absolutely, you should say the pledge every morning, and that's just the way it is. The slightly libertarian, I guess, more side of me is that a symptom of forced patriotism? Or do you think that it just fosters patriotism because it's just words and it's just a flag?
Right. I think there could be many takes on it. From my perspective, I just think that I'm so blessed, and many of my peers are so blessed to live in this great country, America. So, and I think it's almost not even, patriotism. It's almost a gratitude thing. It's almost like you're honoring the history. And, for example, my grandpa died in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot. And I think it's almost honoring his life, honoring the lives of American veterans and American heroes all over time. And I don't think that is necessarily too, offensive in a certain way. And fortunately, we have a country where you can be libertarian. And I don't even think necessarily it's too much force. There's some people that don't say the pledge, which kind of irks me a little bit, just because my grandpa did fight for our country and
right
whatnot. But yeah, I would say that it's not too incorrect today. I think that it should maintain its standard every morning.
Yeah, like I was just curious as to your take on it. My views have changed, and don't get me wrong, I got the American flag behind me, I got the 1776 flag behind me, but I was just wondering as to your personal view of it. My children can recite the pledge, obviously. They said it in their schools, and it's perfectly fine. But I'm right there with you. I think that there should be a degree of gratitude for the country that has, does it have its flaws? Absolutely. Is it still there's nowhere on earth I'd rather live. I mean, I've looked, I've been like, I don't know, man. Maybe we want to move. No, we're not. No, there's nowhere else that comes close to the good old US of A. That said, obviously there's room for improvement. And so what led you, I guess, to get involved the way that you have? Because most teenagers are very, very self-focused, and yeah, there might be, whether it's the latest video game, aka Minecraft, or something like that they get wrapped up in. You really don't see that many people of your age that are involved with politics, but more importantly, that have utilized it to, I guess, help spread the conservative word, such as it is.
Yeah. So, are you asking why hasn't my generation done that? Like I have, or
No, more specifically, why? I guess why are you? What led you to do more than just have a podcast and maybe talk to a couple of people, but it's really, really growing, and you're having some great interviews, and obviously you're going to events, you're getting involved. That's I guess it's my question is, what led you to pursue that as opposed to I guess underage drinking and teen pregnancy, I guess, for lack of a better question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's definitely not, the norm, but, like we were mentioning earlier, I think it's, a little more rebellious to even be a conservative today,
Okay.
which is, interesting. But I think it also, just goes back to, I respect my future. I hope that I have a successful future, and I'm trying to, do what I can to help myself in the future and help, our country in the future to, make sure that I still have the same opportunity in the American dream as vibrant as it was for, my parents and my grandparents.
I
And
love
even
that
when,
answer.
my family immigrated here. And I think, the best way to do that is to, have, discourse with people and talk with people so we can, get things done, and especially, form bonds with my representatives as well.
So one of the things that I love that. I love that answer, because so few, not just your generation, but just people in general, so few people think about not just their future, but the future of their country, their community, and all of that. So that's extremely, extremely refreshing to hear that was a major component for you. I think you have a very, very bright future in politics, and people should definitely keep an eye on you. I hope that when you're 18, or whatever the rules are for the office that you want to run for, I hope that you will do so, because we need smart, well put together young men like yourself to lead this country into a positive future. Um, it's we've seen far too many subpar politicians, and unfortunately they keep getting reelected because, as you said, running for office is very, very, very expensive. So money is what it's usually about.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
So do you have plans now to like run for office in a few years, or is that something you're not ready to reveal? Because I don't blame you if
I mean, I definitely have ambitions. I don't really know like why people, are a little apprehensive to share them. I definitely do have, ambitions to run for some form of public office in
good.
my future. Definitely. We'll see where it takes me, because it's nothing is certain. So, I will definitely see, but that's my goal. That's my kind of motivator for sure.
Okay. All right. Phenomenal. Listen, I wish you the best of luck. And, when the time comes, let us know, because I'd love to help share your message and your information. And I'll tell you, the reason why some people choose not to reveal that, they're going to run, is because it doesn't give the potential opponent time to do opposition research and learn, skeletons in the closet or whatever. That's generally the reasons that they choose. Whether that makes sense is, each individual basis. In my opinion, if you have so much negative information that you don't want people digging into, then maybe you shouldn't run.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. Listen, it's really, really refreshing. What message would you, I guess, send to any especially younger listeners, as far as learning more politically or getting more involved politically?
Yeah, well, to your listeners, to your watchers, I would just say, don't be afraid, don't be timid to reach out to people. You'll be surprised, who will, take you up on, 15-minute, 20-minute conversation. And it really does benefit you talking to the people that represent you, and really understand what you're reading and what each news source is trying to portray. You know what I mean? I feel like people can get duped into certain rabbit holes and whatnot, but you really have to understand the motives of each news source, each platform that you're learning from, and try and get a wide read. Of course, I interview people from all different leadership fields, and also every affiliation that there is, and to just give me different perspectives and see where I lay. You can't come to a conclusion and that's pretty much done. You have to do your due diligence, and I'm not totally totally set on my beliefs either. Of course, I have a lot more growing to do, physically and mentally, in my, political beliefs, and, being open to other ideas. And of course, this podcast, we disagree on some certain things and we agree on some certain things. And it's great to talk to other people so that we can all, become stronger in our beliefs and our convictions, and effectively just disagree better.
You know what? That's a really good term. Disagree better. We see so much vitriol and so much, grr. And that's really, I guess, jumped to the forefront with the election of Trump, which in case anybody, I guess doesn't understand or whatever, when I first started my show, I had a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump behind me. I love me some Trump, but I disagree with some of the choices that he's made. I've talked about that. It is what it is. But at the same time, I can talk to someone who maybe, is part of the, called the TDS, Trump deranged syndrome, or the orange man bad crowd, or
right.
whatever. And I think that has become less and less common. The ability to, like you said, respectfully disagree, or to disagree better. And it's sad to see, because that used to be, I would say, the foundation of America, is the ability to sit down and discuss ideas with people who disagree with us, and then help to come to a consensus.
Right. You think back to, when Nixon and Kennedy were debating, the first televised debates, and oh man, it was nothing like that. I mean, the worst thing that it was, when Reagan said to Carter, "There you go again." Like, I mean, that was the most, attention that it got. And I think that we've come a long way, and it's probably not for the best when it comes to that. So I'm glad, and I hope to be a change in the, political landscape when it comes to that kind of extreme divisiveness.
And I think you are in a perfect position to do so, because there are those on the left, or let's just say that are different political persuasion than myself, who may be leery to come on and speak to me, because they may believe that, I'm going to, whatever. But they were more open to having a conversation with. They're more open to sit down and talk to. And maybe it's less threatening. Maybe it's, well, there's less potential for this being used against me, and, So I believe you're in a perfect position to utilize your youth, your exuberance, and more importantly, your political knowledge, because there's not a lot of young people I know of who actually know who Cincinnatus is, or about that, the first televised debate. I mean, these are things that I'm really happy to hear that you're, maybe I need to move to Valpo and send my kids to Valpo schools, because it sounds like they're doing a pretty good job. Or was most of that, learned on your own?
I do a lot of, reading and watching of a lot of political stuff. So that might be a little bit of my passion as well.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, then props to you. Props to your parents. What can you offer the listener, viewer, maybe of an older generation that are thinking about ways to connect, like especially someone who's running for office, like someone like me in 40s and 50s, that's like, okay, yeah, I'm running for office, but I have no idea how to reach Gen Z. I don't know what TikTok is, or I don't know how to use it. I barely know how to live stream. But what can you say? Like, what's the best way you can think of? Is it focus on social media? Is it maybe like here's a prime example, right? So we have a breakfast that the LaPorte County Republicans, it's called 463 GOP, and they meet at 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday. And I'm like, that's like, you're not going to get young people at 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Stuff like that. Yeah. The older people, almost knocked my drink over. The older people, no problem, get up 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, I've been up for hours, but my son's like, there is no way on a Saturday morning that I'm going to be at anything at 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah. And part of that, goes back to just, making that, accessible, time and location where everyone could really get to in the community. And I think, part of it is some of it is social media. And I won't deny that a lot of Gen Z, if not all of them, are on social media. So I think that's one of the big things. But I also think that it's pretty easy to see someone online and just look at them as they're, an online figure and not in person. Of course, Rodney Pol is a super personable guy, and he'd be a guy that I would like to have, lunch with. And there's another guy that's running for Congress in my district. His name's Randy Niemeyer. And I don't know if you're familiar with him. And I was at the Lincoln Day dinner, it was a great event because it was, in the evening, which I could go to because it wasn't 8:30 in the morning. But I'm there and I'm like, is that Mr. Niemeyer? I go to him, I'm like, hey, Mr. Niemeyer, I'm Gabe Gary and whatnot. And he's like, oh, call me Randy. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is like an actual interaction. So I think, going out, interacting with the youth. And part of that is, setting up events where that it is accessible for them. And, even going to college campuses, going to school campuses, going out to high schools too, to get, students registered to vote too, because there's a lot of 18-year-olds that are new voters in high school as well. So I think that's, a great way to reach them. I know my mom does a lot with voter registration. She'll go out to high schools and it's great.
Okay. Those are some phenomenal ideas. I know Randy. We haven't been to each other's house or anything, but I've seen him at events, talk to him. And I've been told by people who know him a little bit better than I, that he can seem a bit, what's the standoffish or, a little more brusque maybe than Senator Pol can. But once you talk to him, and it doesn't help that he's I think he's what, 6'4", 6'7".
Yeah, he towers over me. He towers.
Yeah, I'm 6'2", and I have to look up at him. He's massive. So yeah, that doesn't help. He can come off as very, but those are great ideas. I appreciate that. Okay, so you do the podcast, which is called Gen Z on Leadership, and that's genzonleadership.com.
Correct.
Okay. And then they can find the link to the Cincinnatus, which is the blog post or in various op-eds at that link. What would you say you're, at least currently, I know you're 15, you probably don't have a lot of down the road plans right now, but your overarching goal, as an interviewer for a job interview would say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How about 10 years?
Right. So, I've, before I started my podcast, I was a little, unsure of what I wanted to do. And, I thought about law a little bit, but I've just come to love what I do as, a podcaster, as a blogger. So as much as I don't really want to be a reporter, I don't think many people do. Even reporters probably don't want to be reporters.
Especially conservatives nowadays.
And it's hard. I mean, it's a hard job to be a reporter, especially with, personal bias and getting that reputation. But I think that, any platform where I get to talk to other people and communicate is going to be one that I'm definitely going to, pursue in my life, anything like that. And also, stay engaged in my community, in my country, especially. So, again, we'll see where it takes me. So yeah, that's, where I want to see.
Okay. All right. No, it's a really good answer. And I think that, like I said before, I believe you have a very bright future, not just politically, but if you decide, to go into journalism or whatever, you're extremely well-spoken. I'm very, I gotta use certain words here. I'm very particular when it comes to grammar. So when I pour over stuff that people post or whatever, I'm the guy that I had to force myself not to, you wrong use of your, or whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't see any errors, man. I mean, seriously, that's a big deal these days. Everything looks really good, proper English, nicely formatted. All of that. And maybe that doesn't matter to some people, but one of the things I've noticed, especially in modern day journalism, and I use journalism loosely, is the terrible editorial performance there, wrong words, misspelled words, constantly missing links, just abysmal quality. So it would be really nice to have, someone as on point as you, I guess, telling us local / other news. The more I talk to you, have you looked up Justin Keel?
I think I did. Yeah, I saw him, but I haven't really interacted with him. I mean, of course.
Oh my God. The reason I bring up Justin, right? Not only do you physically remind me of him, you're not like spitting image, but I asked Justin, I'm like, are you sure your family doesn't live, in Valpo or have an offshoot or something? He bought a paper at 17, the Westville Indicator, and he's a journalist. That's like, he started writing articles and all of that, very involved politically. And now he's on LaPorte County Council. And I like, the parallels are stunning, man. I like, seriously, if you haven't reached out to him, do so. I'd be surprised if he wasn't willing to offer you at least a little free, advice, guidance, because he was there. Now, today you have more technological resources than he did. He's like, I think he's like 27 now. So it's been a little while since he was your age, but he was already starting to, get into, like you said, journalism or reporting or whatever. And he was like, nowadays podcasts and stuff like that, that's the modern day reporting. That's citizen journalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So it might just, throwing it out there, it might, Justin, if you're watching or listening, I swear, man, if you don't reach out to this kid, it's a crime.
Yeah, I'd love to get in touch with Justin. And, if you are listening, you can go to my website too to contact me, genzonleadership.com. So, yeah.
There you go. Everybody, seriously, go to his website, check it out. I really sincerely mean, I was very impressed with what I saw and what I heard.
Thank you.
I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. I really hope that you will become involved more politically, especially approaching 18, because we desperately need people with their heads screwed on right, who have a love and appreciation for their country and all that it's done and all that it's been. Yeah, man, I'm very, very impressed by you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And to your listeners as well. Yeah, check out my website, of course, genzonleadership.com. And on there, you can find all my social medias. It's at Gabriel F. Gary everywhere. So that's where you can, reach out to me and learn about the Cincinnatus and my podcast as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. It's been a true pleasure talking with you. And I hope you'll stay in touch. And as your career grows and especially as your podcast grows, I'd love to have you on again, maybe do some cross networking or just to kind of check in with you and see how things are going.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Dion, for having me on the show. It's been a great time.
Absolutely. It was a great pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. So that was Gabriel Gary. Gabe Gary is his preference, but at Gabriel F. Gary. This guy is awesome. I mean, seriously, 15 years old, and he's done so much. The only thing I accomplished at 15, well, we're not going to get into that because I was a bad boy at 15, but I'm very, very impressed with him. Thumbs up. Seriously, keep an eye on him. Once again, for those of you, maybe watching or listening as you drive, at Gabriel F. Gary on all social media and genzonleadership.com. Check it out. There's some really good stuff there. That's about it for this episode, but we got some great stuff coming up. Every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., we do coffee break with Dion and Jim, and Jim happens to be the best friend that I was telling you guys about, who's a veteran. We talk about everything from I don't know if you guys watched the Fallout show or played the game, but Vault Tech is a very big part of kind of the lore and everything in the history there in that game. And Vault Tech is a company that, built vaults. They did other stuff, but believe it or not, there's a real life version of Vault Tech. And we talked about it this past Wednesday. We talked about all kinds of stuff. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I do greatly appreciate your time, and I hope that you'll check out some of our other episodes. Without further ado, God bless you, God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. I hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.